Think about your earliest memory. Not a story someone told you, not a photograph you have seen so many times it feels like a memory. An actual memory. Something you experienced, something you were there for. For most people, that memory is from around age 3 or 4. A birthday, a kitchen, a sibling being born. Something specific, but somehow also fuzzy, like looking at an old photograph taken slightly out of focus. Now, try to go earlier. Try to remember being 2. Try to remember being 1. Try to remember being born. Nothing. A complete, total, perfect blank. Not dim or hazy or difficult to access. Gone. As if the first 3 years of your life simply did not happen. As if you started existing at age 3 and everything before that belongs to somebody else's story. And the extraordinary thing is that those years were not empty. You were there for all of it. You were awake. You were experiencing things. Cold, hunger, warmth, your mother's face, your father's voice, light, darkness, pain, comfort, fear, joy. You were learning at a rate so extraordinary that no other period of your life will ever come close. In the first year alone, your brain doubled in volume. You went from a creature who could not hold its own head up to one who could walk, recognize faces, understand dozens of words, and grasp the basic social rules of the world around you. You were doing all of that, and you remember none of it. Why? The answer is stranger than you think, and what researchers just discovered about it in 2025, in a study that made scientists rethink almost everything they believed, might be the most unsettling thing you hear today. For over a century, scientists thought they knew the answer. The explanation seemed obvious. Babies cannot remember because their brains are not yet built to form memories. The hippocampus, the banana-shaped structure deep in the brain that acts as the gateway for long-term memory, is immature in infancy. It is still developing. It is not ready. And so the memories simply do not form. They never exist. They are not lost. They were never there to begin with. This is what textbooks said. This is what researchers believed for more than 100 years. It made sense. It fit everything we knew about how memory works. There was just one problem. It was wrong. In March 2025, researchers at Yale University published a study in the journal Science that changed the picture completely. They put 26 infants, children between 4 months and 2 years old, inside specially designed fMRI scanners. Getting babies to hold still in an MRI machine is, as you can imagine, not a simple task, but the team managed it. And what they found inside those tiny brains was not what anyone expected. The babies were shown a series of images, faces, objects, scenes, new ones and repeated ones. And while those images appeared on the screen, the researchers watched what happened inside the posterior hippocampus, the exact region of the brain that handles episodic memory in adults. It lit up. Not just with general activity, with memory encoding. The stronger the hippocampal response when an infant first saw an image, the more the infant looked at it when it appeared again later. The classic behavioral sign that the brain recognized it, that it had stored something, that a memory was there. Babies as young as 12 months old were forming episodic memories. The machinery was working. The hippocampus was doing its job. Which means the question is no longer, why do babies fail to form memories? The question is something far more unsettling. Why can you not get them back? Because here's what that study means if you sit with it for a moment. The memories are there. Or they were at some point. They were encoded, stored, written into the circuits of your brain when you were 1 year old, lying in a crib watching a mobile spin above your head for the 10,000th time, while somewhere in your hippocampus, a tiny neural pattern quietly filed the experience away. And then, something erased it. Not right away, not all at once, slowly. Over the first few years of your life, those memories became unreachable. Not deleted necessarily. Animal studies have shown something deeply strange. When researchers use light to directly stimulate the specific hippocampal neurons that encoded a memory in an infant mouse, the mouse could access the memory again. It was there, buried, locked, inaccessible through normal retrieval, but still there. The memories from your first year of life may not be gone. They may simply be behind a door your adult brain no longer has the key to open. So that's the answer to the question you came here with. You cannot remember being a baby not because your baby brain failed to record what was happening. You cannot remember being a baby because somewhere between then and now, the retrieval system broke. The recordings exist. The filing system that lets you access them no longer works. But here's where it gets even stranger, because the question of why retrieval fails leads somewhere that science is still working through, and the answer involves something happening in your brain right now that is beautiful and terrible in equal measure. Your hippocampus never stopped growing. Even after birth, the hippocampus continues producing new neurons at a rapid rate, a process called neurogenesis. And this is where the story takes its strangest turn. Those new neurons, as they integrate into the existing hippocampal circuitry, do not just add storage space, they rewire the existing connections. They disrupt established patterns. They're like new roads being built through an old city. The roads make the city better and more connected, but in the process, some of the old signs get knocked down, and some of the old routes become impossible to follow. When researchers artificially suppressed neurogenesis in infant mice, physically slowed down the rate of new neuron growth, something remarkable happened. The mice could suddenly access memories from early infancy that they had previously been unable to retrieve. The memories had not disappeared. They had been buried by the flood of new neurons growing over them. And when researchers did the opposite, took adult mice and induced high rates of neurogenesis through exercise, which also causes new neuron production, those adult mice began to forget recent memories faster than normal. More new neurons, more forgetting. Your infant brain was growing so fast, generating new neurons at such a furious rate that the very process of your development was overriding your earliest experiences. Not maliciously, not as a mistake, but as an unavoidable consequence of the most extraordinary period of biological construction in your entire life. You forgot your first years because you were too busy building the brain that would remember everything after. But there is one more piece of this that science has only recently begun to grapple with, and it is the piece that changes how you think about every memory you have ever had. Nearly 40% of people, when asked about their earliest memory, report one that cannot possibly be real. Not because they're lying, because they genuinely believe it. A study of over 6,000 people found that 39% described the first memory from before the age of 2, from a period when episodic memory encoding was not yet fully operational. Memories they feel completely certain about, memories with detail and texture and emotion, memories that, by everything neuroscience knows, should not exist. So where did those memories come from? Photographs, stories, repetition. Your parents told you about the day you came home from the hospital so many times that the telling became a memory. You were shown the photograph of your first birthday so often that the image became an experience. Someone described your reaction to snow for the first time in such vivid detail that your brain filed it as something you lived rather than something you heard. Your memory did not just lose your early life. It replaced it, built a reconstruction out of fragments and stories and photographs, and filled the blank where your first years should be with something that felt real, that felt like yours, that felt like memory, but was actually a story you were told so many times it stopped feeling like a story. You were not there for your earliest memories. You were told them, and your brain, desperately trying to fill the blank, accepted them anyway. So here's where this leaves you. The first time you felt warm, the first time you were held, the first face you recognized, the first voice that meant safety to you before you even knew the word for safety, the very first moment of your conscious life. All of it happened. All of it was recorded, at least briefly, at least partially, by a hippocampus that was already doing its best. And all of it is inaccessible to you now, locked behind neural rewiring that happened because your brain was too busy becoming what it needed to be to preserve what it was. You do not remember being a baby because you were too busy becoming a person. And that first year, the one you cannot touch, cannot retrieve, cannot find, and no matter how far back you reach, was not empty. It was the most important year of your life. The year your brain built the architecture that everything else would be constructed on. The year you learned that voices meant people, and warmth meant safety, and darkness was something that could end. You cannot remember any of it, but it remembers you. Every connection your brain made in that first year, every pattern your hippocampus quietly filed before the flood of new neurons swept over it, it's all still in there, not as something you can recall, as something you became. The baby you cannot remember is not gone. They are the foundation everything you remember is built on. That's all for today. If this made you think differently about the blank at the beginning of your story, subscribe and consider supporting the channel.